The air in Lumiere's dining room turned to ice the moment Brad Thompson, the restaurant manager, decided to play judge and jury. His voice, dripping with faux politeness, cut through the clink of silverware like a scalpel. "Ma'am, you need to leave. Immediately." The words weren't just a request. They were a verdict delivered to Amara Williams, a black woman in a tailored navy blazer. Her briefcase gripped so tight her knuckles paled. Crystal chandeliers threw jagged shadows across her face as every diner, mostly white, mostly wealthy, paused their $200 steaks to watch the spectacle. Brad straightened his tie, smug. "We have standards here." The unspoken hung heavier than the restaurant's velvet drapes. "You don't belong." Amara's laugh was quiet, dangerous. "Oh, I'm aware of your standards." She'd seen them in action for months, the way Brad oversaw the staff, how his smile never quite reached his eyes when greeting guests of color. But tonight he'd picked the wrong woman to flex his power on. Maria, the young Latina hostess, bit her lip, torn between duty and decency. "Sir," she whispered, "maybe we should—" Brad silenced her with a glare. "Security's on speed dial, ma'am." He sneered, thumb hovering over his phone. "Don't make this ugly." What Brad didn't know. 30 minutes earlier, Amara had been standing outside her restaurant, the one she'd mortgaged her brownstone to build, watching the very inequality she'd vowed to dismantle. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she'd seen it all, the sommelier fawn over a table of Wall Street types while ignoring the black couple celebrating their anniversary. The way Brad accidentally reseated darker-skinned guests near the kitchen. She'd walked in tonight not as the owner, but as a test. And Brad, he'd failed spectacularly. Now, as he reached for his radio, Amara pulled a single key from her blazer pocket, the one stamped Lumiere Master. The clink of metal on marble echoed. "Funny," she said, voice shifting from steel to something darker, amused. "You're firing the wrong person." Brad's face drained of color as Maria gasped. The diners? They didn't just stare. Now they leaned in. Amara let the silence stretch, savoring the moment before dropping the hammer. "Pack your desk. Your standards, they just got evicted." Outside, a valet whistled as he buffed a Tesla. Inside, the real show had just begun. Brad's final act of defiance came not with words, but with a petty swipe at the champagne tower, as security let him out, sending crystal flutes crashing to the floor. The room froze. Then, without missing a beat, Luis emerged from the kitchen, wielding a mop and bucket. "Don't worry, heifer," he called to Amara. "We clean up trash here every day." The staff roared as Luis made a show of mopping around Brad's polished loafers. Amara didn't flinch. Instead, she reached behind the bar and pulled out a battered metal lunchbox, the same one she'd used during her food truck days. "See this?" She pried it open to reveal a yellowed Chicago Tribune clipping from a decade ago. "Southside, chef denied business loan, not the demographic we fund." "This," she said, slapping it onto the wine-stained bar, "is why we're launching the Lumiere Legacy Fund today. $500,000 in microloans for minority-owned food businesses. First recipient." She nodded to Jerome, her Uber driver from last night, who just walked in holding a stack of permits for his own soul food truck. The twist, Jerome's teenage daughter, the one studying hospitality, stepped forward with a checkbook. "My tuition money can wait," she announced. "This is the real education." The GMA camera zoomed in as she wrote a $5,000 personal check to the fund. Brad, now pinned in the doorway by the protesters' shame wall of mirrored signs reflecting his own face back at him, made a desperate lunge for his phone. Too late. A notification blared. "Lumiere Chicago just tagged you in their post." The restaurant's Instagram had gone live with a side-by-side Brad's sneering "Your kind" face next to Amara's Forbes 30 Under 30 profile. Caption: "Meet the troublemaker who owns us. New era." As the crowd outside erupted in cheers, Chef Mateo unveiled the day's true special, a reconstructed champagne tower, this time with juice boxes for the protesters' kids. No one, Amara, declared popping the first Capri Sun with ceremonial flair, gets left out of the toast. The last thing Brad heard before the door slammed behind him, the entire staff singing "Happy Termination to You" in perfect mocking harmony. Brad's phone buzzed violently against his coffee table. Another LinkedIn notification. "Your profile has been flagged for violating community standards." He swiped it away just as his doorbell rang. A process server stood holding a thick envelope, "Thompson versus Williams Hospitality Group, wrongful termination," in bold letters. The irony was brutal. He'd planned to file first, but Amara's legal team had moved faster. Meanwhile, at Lumiere, the champagne flowed freely, not just for guests, but for the entire block. Amara had thrown open the doors to the public, offering free petit fours, stamped with "We Belong" in edible gold. The line stretched around the corner, snaking past Jerome's newly christened food truck, where he served Brad's Last Supper sandwiches, dry, overpriced, and served with a side of side-eye. The media circus reached its peak when Chef Jose Andres himself walked in, trailed by cameras from the Today Show. "Amara," he called, embracing her like family. "We're making this the model for the industry." Behind them, Carlos, now promoted to assistant manager, quietly replaced the dress code sign with a new one. "Prejudice-free zone only requirement is basic human decency." Back in his apartment, Brad's TV flickered with breaking news. Illinois legislators had just fast-tracked Amara's law, requiring implicit bias training for all hospitality workers. The bill's sponsor grinned at the cameras. "Thanks to one brave woman dining, while black will never be a crime in Chicago again." The final blow came via certified mail, a letter from the Court of Master Sommeliers revoking Brad's certification for conduct unbecoming. Attached was a post-it from Jennifer, P.S. "I donated your private reserve to the community center you mocked. They loved the 89 Lafite," as the sunset over Chicago Lumiere's windows glowed like a beacon. Inside, Amara raised a glass with her staff, now 30% more diverse after one day of aggressive recruiting. Outside, the protesters had turned into a celebration, their signs now reading, "Amara's seat reserved for all." And somewhere in the crowd, a young black girl tugged her mother's sleeve, pointing at the restaurant's gleaming facade. "Mama," she whispered, "when I grow up, I'm gonna eat there every day." Her mother kissed her forehead. "Baby, you already belong." Brad's final humiliation came when his local Whole Foods banned him from the wine section, a handwritten sign reading, "We reserve the right to refuse service to those who refuse service to others," taped above the Bordeaux. His Uber rating plummeted after drivers recognized him from viral memes, one canceling mid-ride with the note, "Sorry you don't fit my car's atmosphere." Meanwhile, Lumiere's hostess stand became a pilgrimage site. Tourists posed beside Maria, now featured on the cover of Restaurant Business, while Carlos led discrimination to distinction tours of the dining room, dramatically reenacting Brad's downfall for $50 a head, proceeds funding culinary scholarships. The Table 12, where Sarah Chen had recorded the viral video, now required a $500 reservation deposit and came with a complimentary Know Your Place mocktail ingredients, humility karma, and a twist of lemon. Amara's face smiled down from billboards across Chicago, "Exceptional food, no exceptions," as the city declared October 12th Inclusive Dining Day. The kicker, Brad's former country club voted unanimously to rename their dining room the Amara Williams Pavilion, complete with a bronze statue of her food truck where the "No Cell Phones" sign used to hang. As snow fell on Christmas Eve, a single unmarked envelope slid under Brad's door. Inside, a photo of Lumiere's staff holiday party, every employee wearing "I Belong" sweaters, and a job application for Olive Garden. Someone had circled the "No experience necessary" line in gold Sharpie. The back read, "P.S. Our breadsticks really are unlimited, just like second chances, but not for you." The team. The courtroom gasped when the prosecution played never-before-heard audio Brad's private conversation with the sommelier just minutes before confronting Amara. "We don't comp wine for those kinds of customers. They wouldn't appreciate it anyway." The recording captured by Lumiere's newly installed equity microphones. Amara's post-scandal innovation made even the bailiff wince. Brad's public defender tried one last Hail Mary, a character witness from his country club days. But when the elderly member took the stand and drawled, "Brad always knew how to keep undesirable elements out," Judge Williams' gavel came down like a thunderclap. "That phrase alone," she seethed, "tells me everything I need to know about your character references." The coup de grace came from an unexpected source, Brad's former mentor at the Wanetka Country Club, who testified via Zoom from his golf cart. "Your Honor, we paid $85,000 in 2018 to settle Brad's previous discrimination incident. He was supposed to attend sensitivity training." The gallery erupted as he added, "Guess he skipped that lecture." Amara didn't smile when the judge ruled discrimination a misdemeanor punishable by 200 hours of community service serving meals at the very South Side shelter, where Amara's food truck got its start. But when Brad was ordered to wear a Lumiere apron embroidered with "Inclusion Ambassador," during his sentence even the stenographer cracked up. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed Amara. She ignored their shouted questions until spotting Jerome's daughter in the crowd, now wearing a Columbia College hoodie with future Williams Hospitality CEO sharpied on the back. "That," Amara said, pointing at the beaming teen, "is the only verdict that matters." As cameras flashed, Brad slunk out a side exit straight into a waiting Uber. The driver, Carlos's cousin. 5-star rating, or I take the scenic route through every pothole in Chicago. He grinned, flooring it toward Shamburg. The radio started from the bottom at full blast. Back at Lumiere, Chef Mateo unveiled that night's special humble pie a la mode, served with a side of justice. The courtroom erupted as Judge Williams' gavel fell. Brad's face turned ashen when the bailiff slapped him with an additional restraining order. He was now legally prohibited from entering any Williams Hospitality Group establishment, including the food trucks. A reporter in the front row live-streamed the moment his $800 Allen Edmonds loafers squeaked across the polished floor, in retreat the sound echoing like a deflating balloon. Outside, Amara's press conference took an unexpected turn when 12 Lumiere employees emerged in matching "We Belong" t-shirts, wheeling out a giant check. From our staff tips, Maria announced, "We've raised $46,000 for the Illinois Restaurant Quality Fund." The crowd roared as Chef Mateo added, "That's $1 for every time Brad made someone feel unwelcome." But the mic drop moment came when Jerome's daughter stepped forward with a leather-bound book, the first 100 pages filled with handwritten applications from minority culinary students. "The Williams Scholars Program starts today," Amara declared, flipping open to reveal Brad's mugshot taped inside the cover. A bold red stamp across his forehead read, "Caution, what discrimination looks like," as cameras flashed a familiar voice cut through the crowd. "Room for one more scholar?" Sarah Chen asked, holding up her viral phone, now displayed in the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History. The tick-tock that started it all would fund 10 full scholarships. Somewhere in suburban Schaumburg, the diner's grill sizzled as Brad flipped patties under his probation officer's watchful eye. The special board behind him read, "Today's lesson, humble pie, $3.99, no substitutions." Back at Lumiere, the real work continued. Amara adjusted her navy blazer, now framed beside the host stand, and welcomed the evening's first guests, a black family from the South Side, seated at what was formerly Table 12, now renamed the Belonging Booth. The sommelier approached with the wine list. Jennifer didn't even blink when they ordered the '89 Lafitte. "Excellent choice," she smiled, "and might I suggest pairing it with our house specialty." The menu simply read, "Justice, served daily." The ripple effects reached every corner of the industry. When Michelin announced its new Inclusion Star rating, a mandatory criterion for all future guides, chefs from Paris to Tokyo scrambled to attend Amar's masterclasses. Her dignity over dress code TED Talk became required viewing at staff meetings worldwide, with a viral moment when a Tokyo sushi chef demonstrated the Brad test, using chopsticks to remove a single grain of racism from a bowl of perfect rice. Even Wall Street took notice. The day Goldman Sachs launched its Hospitality Equality Index Fund, Williams Hospitality Group's valuation jumped 42%. Rival restaurants rushed to hire diversity officers, so many that Columbia created a crash course, cheekily titled, "Don't Be a Brad 101. The most unexpected twist." A tearful reunion at Lumiere's one-year anniversary celebration. The elderly white couple from Table 8, who'd nodded approvingly during Brad's discrimination, returned with their black granddaughter in tow. "We didn't see it then," the grandfather admitted, gripping Amara's hands, "but you've taught us what true excellence looks like." Their granddaughter, a Spelman sophomore, would be Lumiere's first Williams Scholar intern. As the champagne flowed, a package arrived for Amara. Inside, Brad's old Lumiere name tag repurposed as a keychain by his probation officer. The engraving read, "Never forget what not to be." And in Schaumburg, the diner's new owner, a Vietnamese refugee who'd bought the place with Williams Hospitality Group's microloan, taped up a fresh sign, "No discrimination, no Brads, no exceptions." The smell of faux braised short ribs filled the air as the lunch crowd cheered. Somewhere, a breadstick snapped in half. The sound was deafening. The celebration reached its peak when the kitchen door swung open, revealing Chef Mateo, wheeling out a towering cake shaped like a courtroom gavel frosted with the words, "Justice never tasted so sweet." The real surprise came when he lifted the cake dome to reveal not dessert, but the original "No Exceptions" sign from Lumiere's host, stand now bronzed and mounted as a permanent installation. A hush fell as Amara tapped her champagne glass. Before she could speak, the entire staff raised their phones, each screen displaying the same image of Brad's viral video, frozen at the exact moment he'd pointed toward the door. "Look how far we've come," Carlos announced, swiping to a new photo today's packed dining room, every table filled with smiling faces of every hue. Then came the mic drop. Jerome's daughter, now Lumiere's first Diversity Innovation Fellow, wheeled in a hologram projector. Suddenly, Amara's food truck materialized in the center of the dining room, its tacos and tolerance menu glowing. For our next act, Amara grinned, "We're taking this show on the road, literally." The hologram morphed into blueprints for mobile teaching kitchens that would bring culinary training to food deserts nationwide. Outside, a familiar figure lurked in the shadows, Brad, now a grocery store night stalker, peering through the windows. His probation officer had suggested he witness the change. As he watched the celebration inside, a group of culinary students walked past their backpacks sporting WWAD pins. What would Amara do? One student spotted Brad and paused. Instead of scorn, she offered him a Williams hospitality recruitment brochure. "Second chances start with self-awareness," she said gently. "The dish pit's always hiring." Back inside, the sommelier poured everyone a taste of the 89 Lafite now reserved exclusively for toasting milestones in inclusion. As glasses clinked, the Michelin inspector leaned over to Amara. "The star is for the food. But this," he gestured around the room, "this is the future hospitality." Somewhere, a breadstick basket was passed. Family style, no limits, no exceptions. The sound of breaking bread echoed like applause. Amara's eyes glistened as the elderly couple cut into their anniversary cake, a stunning replica of the Supreme Court's Loving v. Virginia decision rendered in edible gold leaf. The sommelier presented them with a bottle of 1973 Bordeaux, the year they'd married, now christened the Belonging Blend, in Lumiere's cellar. A sudden commotion at the door interrupted the moment. Sarah Chen entered, flanked by camera crews, not for scandal this time, but to announce her tech firm's $5 million donation to the Williams Scholars Program. "Consider it reparations for all the free publicity," she joked, handing Amara an oversized check with the memo line for tables turned. The real surprise came when the kitchen doors burst open. Brad, now clean-shaven and wearing a Chicago Urban League shirt, wheeled out a cart bearing his infamous Standards Manual, now shredded and repurposed as confetti for Lumiere's signature quality espresso served with a sprinkle of humility. "I know I don't deserve to be here," he stammered, "but I brought something." With shaking hands, he presented Amara with his court-issued completion certificate, the restorative justice stamp partially obscuring his tear stains. The room held its breath. Amara studied the document, then did what no one expected. She reached for the Belonging Blend and poured Brad a half glass. "Not full forgiveness," she said, the ghost of old pain in her smile, "but enough to toast progress." As the cameras flashed, Marcus whispered to the birthday girl at table 12, "See that even second chances get a seat at Ms. Williams' table." The child nodded solemnly and passed Brad a breadstick, one single breadstick with all the gravity of a peace treaty. Outside, the marquee flickered to life with Lumiere's new motto, "Reservations required, dignity always included." Somewhere in the kitchen, Chef Mateo cranked up "A Change Is Gonna Come." As the dishwashers banged their pots in rhythm, the sound of an industry being remade one conscience at a time. And when the Michelin inspector finally tasted the Justice Never Tasted So Sweet cake, now featuring layers of red velvet chocolate ganache, and a single sour cherry at its center, he added a secret sixth star to his notes for changing what excellence means. As the birthday girl at table 12 blew out her candles, the entire dining room erupted in applause, not just for her, but for the new world being born. The cake's smoke curled into the shape of a hashtag before dissipating belonging looks like this. Amara felt a tap on her shoulder. There stood Jerome, now the proud owner of 3 food trucks holding a vintage Polaroid. "Remember this." It was a grainy shot of her first taco truck where she'd handwritten on the menu board, "All welcome, no exceptions." She choked up seeing how tiny her daughter had been perched on a milk crate taking orders. The moment shattered when the kitchen doors burst open again. Chef Mateo emerged carrying a bubbling flaming dish creme brulee a la Justice, the caramelized sugar forming a perfect scales of justice pattern. "Special dessert," he announced. The fire represents systemic change hot enough to melt prejudice, cool enough to serve immediately. Outside, a curious sight unfolded. Brad stood frozen on the sidewalk staring at Lumiere's new display window, a rotating exhibit of letters from culinary students who'd benefited from the Williams Scholarship. One note in particular caught the light. "Dear Ms. Williams, I'm the daughter of the couple you seated by the kitchen in Milwaukee. Next fall, I'll be the first black woman in Cornell's hotel management PhD program. P.S. Tell Brad, thanks, his discrimination paid my tuition." Back inside, the elderly interracial couple requested their check. The bill came on a replica of their original 1973 marriage license paid in full, stamped where the racist judge's signature would have been. As they rose to leave, the entire staff formed an honor guard, each holding a single breadstick like ceremonial batons. Amara's phone buzzed. A text from her daughter at college. "Mom just got asked to consult on the White House Kitchen Diversity Initiative. Should I charge them in breadsticks?" Somewhere in the kitchen, a radio played Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Gonna Come," as the dishwashers sang along, their voices rising through the vents floating over Chicago like a promise kept. And when the Michelin inspector finally left, he scribbled one last note in the margins of his report. "Star them all you want. The real rating system is the light in that little girl's eyes at table 12. The breadsticks, for the record, remained unlimited. As the credits rolled on Lumiere's story, a final scene unfolded outside the restaurant. The young birthday girl from table 12 pressed her nose against the glass, watching Chef Mateo decorate a cake for tomorrow's reservation, a black cardiologist celebrating his anniversary with his white husband. "Ah, Mommy," she whispered, pointing to the rainbow-colored frosting, "that's what forever looks like." Inside, Amara tucked a $100 bill into the kitchen's breadstick fund, the staff's secret name for their microloan pool. The note fluttered into a jar, already overflowing with cash, its label reading, "For the next kid who dreams bigger than the world lets them." And in the alley, where the dumpsters once held Brad's dignity, a new mural shimmered in the moonlight, a portrait of Amara's first food truck with the words, "Start here. Change everything," blooming like edible flowers across the brick. Somewhere, a judge's gavel echoed. A scholarship check was signed. A reservation book flipped to tomorrow's page-blank spaces waiting to be filled with names that would have been turned away 3 years ago. The revolution, it turned out, would not only be televised, it would come with complimentary breadsticks. Unlimited. For everyone. Finn. Brad's smirk faltered for half a second, just long enough for Amara to notice. Olive Garden. The audacity would have been laughable if it weren't so telling. She tilted her head, feigning curiosity. "Funny you mention that. Their breadsticks are unlimited." The jab landed like a pinprick, but the dining room, now a silent jury, caught it. A stifled chuckle erupted from a server near the kitchen. Brad's neck flushed crimson. Carlos, the server lingering with his tray of truffle arancini, seized the moment. "Sir," he interjected, a voice butter smooth, "perhaps the lady would enjoy our private reserve list." He emphasized the last two words with a glance at Amara. A silent, "I got you." Brad's glare could have melted steel. "That's for VIPs only," he hissed. Amara's fingers brushed the key in her pocket. "How exclusive," she mused. "Tell me, Brad, do those VIPs all look like you, or is that just a happy accident?" The air crackled. Maria, gripping her reservation book like a lifeline, suddenly straightened. "Mr. Thompson," she blurted, "the Chateau Lafitte 89. It's missing from the cellar log." A lie, but a glorious one. Brad's head whipped toward her. "What?" Amara seized the opening. "A $15,000 bottle unaccounted for." "That's not an inspection, Brad. That's an audit." Her tone shifted, sharpening like a blade. "And while we're at it," she plucked a menu from the hostess stand, flipping to the wine list. "Your market price for the Dom Perignon is 300% over wholesale. Exploitative even for Gold Coast. Brad's mouth opened, then snapped shut. The diners were fully invested now, forks, suspended napkins forgotten. A silver-haired man at table 9 leaned in, whispering to his companion, "She's destroying him." Amara let the silence simmer before delivering the coup de grace. "Oh, and Brad, that community center you mentioned is my next project. Free culinary training for kids your standards would have ignored." From the corner of her eye, Amara caught Carlos discreetly sliding his phone from his apron, recording, no doubt. Good. Let the world see how Lumiere's manager handled unwelcome guests. Brad, now sweating through his starched collar, reached for his radio again, but the kitchen doors swung open. Chef Mateo, his whites smeared with mole sauce, barreled through. "Dios mío, Brad, you're harassing the owner." The gasp from table 12 was almost comedic. Brad's hand froze midair. Amara finally let her smile reach her eyes. Surprise. Brad's fingers splayed across her documents like a trespasser rifling through spreadsheets marked Lumiere Q3 projections with the subtlety of a bulldozer. "A Yelp review." Amara repeated, her voice dripping with something between pity and venom. "Brad, honey, if I wanted to trash this place, I'd just let you keep talking." The young woman at table 12 choked on her champagne, her phone still recording. Then came the twist, the kind of cosmic joke the universe loves. Brad's radio crackled to life. "Manager to front stat. We've got a situation with the voice cut off as Amara's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, theatrically swiped open a notification, and sighed. "Oh, look, Milwaukee's calling." She held up the screen, a live video feed from her second location's security cameras, where Brad's protege, a carbon copy in a cheaper suit, was mid-tirade at a black family over dress code violations. The timestamp 8 minutes ago. Brad's jaw worked soundlessly. Amara tilted her head, sweet as arsenic. Funny how history repeats when you hire clones. The dining room erupted, not in gasps, but in murmurs, the kind that slithered through linen tablecloths and settled like verdicts. The elderly couple at table 8 clutched their pearls, suddenly less certain. Carlos stepped forward, tray abandoned. "Ms. Williams," he said, loud enough for the room, "should I call corporate?" The emphasis hung in the air like a noose. Brad lunged for the radio, but Chef Mateo blocked him, arms crossed, mole sauce smears now looking suspiciously like wall paint. "Try it, Hefe," he growled. "See who they back." Amara snapped her briefcase shut. The click echoed. "Let's clarify your hierarchy, Brad." Her voice dropped low and lethal. "You're right, the owners are in Europe, because I sent them there, on vacation, after buying their shares last Tuesday." She plucked a single sheet from her files, a notarized deed, and let it flutter onto the hostess stand. "Welcome to your new operational authority unemployment." From the back, a slow clap started. The young professional at table 12, phone still raised, stood with tears in her eyes. "Bravo," she whispered. The word spread like wildfire. Even the sommelier, a man who'd ignored Amara's entrance, now poured a glass of the 89 Lafite the missing bottle and slid it toward her with a bow. Brad's tie seemed to be strangling him. You can't just—" "Oh, I can," Amara said, sipping the wine. "But here's the twist, you're not fired." The room froze. She grinned. "You're demoted. Effective immediately, you'll report to Maria, who, by the way," she tossed the hostess a key identical to her own, "just earned your promotion." The applause was deafening. Brad's face priceless. The Uber's tires hissed against wet pavement as Jerome took a deliberate left turn away from the route Amara's app suggested. "Mind if we take the scenic route?" he asked, eyes flicking to hers in the mirror. "Looks like you could use a minute." Amara's grip on her briefcase eased just slightly. Outside, the glittering skyline of Chicago blurred into streaks of gold and shadow. Then, Jerome did something unexpected. He reached back, popped open the glove compartment, and slid a battered business card toward her. Southside United. It read, Community Advocacy and Legal Aid. My brother-in-law's organization, he said. They've sued 3 restaurants this year for the kind of mess you just walked out of. Amara's laugh was bitter. I own the restaurant. Jerome's whistle was long and low. Damn. So that's why you look like you want to burn something down. The truth hit her then, sharp as a chef's knife. Brad wasn't the disease. He was a symptom. The your kind speech, the curated atmosphere, this was the unspoken rulebook of so-called elite spaces. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Carlos. He's telling staff you were a disgruntled ex-employee. Also, Jennifer quit on the spot. Says she didn't sign up to be the wine-pouring face of systemic racism. Attached was a video Brad smug at the bar bragging to a regular about handling the situation. Amara's thumb hovered over her screen. Then she opened her contacts and tapped a name she hadn't dialed in years. Ethan Cole, investigative reporter, Chicago Tribune. The call connected on the first ring. Williams. Ethan drawled, Last time you called, I got a Pulitzer nomination. What are we burning today? Back at Lumiere, Brad was too busy basking in his imagined victory to notice the ripple effect. Maria had already texted every minority employee a screenshot of the deed. The dishwasher, a Guatemalan immigrant named Luis, was scribbling notes in Spanish testimonio para la demanda. And the young woman from Table 12, her TikTok video captioned, When the owner doesn't fit the atmosphere, was gaining 10,000 views per minute. Amara rolled down the window, letting the wind whip her braids. Jerome, she said, how'd you like to be my witness in a little corporate restructuring? The Uber's turn signal clicked like a metronome as Jerome grinned. Honey, I'll testify and bring popcorn. Somewhere in the Gold Coast, a crystal chandelier flickered. The reckoning had just begun. Jerome's text lit up her screen. FYI, your ex-employee just ordered a round of Dom for his loyal regulars, charging it to the house naturally. Amara's fingers flew across her laptop, pulling up Lumiere's real-time inventory system. A few keystrokes later, every premium bottle in the cellar was flagged with an alert, property of Williams Hospitality, unauthorized consumption subject to legal action. She smirked. Let Brad explain that to his sycophants when their $800 champagne turned into evidence. Her fifth call wasn't in her contacts. It was to the one person who'd understand the visceral sting of tonight. Mama, Amara said, when the line connected, her voice cracking just enough to betray the storm inside. 2 syllables, and her mother, who'd mortgaged their home to fund Amara's first food truck, was already reaching for her coat. Baby, where you at? I'll bring the cast-iron skillet and my checkbook. The absurdity of the offer loosened the knot in Amara's chest. Not that kind of fight, she laughed, wiping her eyes. But I'm gonna need your famous peach cobbler recipe. We're hosting a staff appreciation brunch tomorrow. Meanwhile, back at Lumiere, Brad's victory lap was hitting snags. The sommelier Jennifer, who'd quietly texted Amara her resignation, now stood arms crossed in front of the wine fridge. Corporate lock, she announced, sweetly jingling the keys Brad didn't know she had. Something about preventing asset mismanagement. The Dom Perignon stayed corked. At 1:17 a.m., Amara strode into her corporate office where David, her perpetually sleep-deprived business partner, was mainlining cold brew. He took one look at the security footage and exploded. That racist donut actually Christ Amara, we vetted this guy. She tossed him a folder. Correction, you vetted him, based on a recommendation from his frat brother at the country club. David palmed his face. I owe you a lifetime supply of those caramelized plantains you like. By dawn, the dominoes were lined up. Janet had drafted termination papers so airtight they'd survive a Supreme Court challenge. Sarah's PR team had prepped statements in 6 languages. And Jerome, he'd recruited 3 fellow Uber drivers to testify about the distressed black woman they'd seen ejected from Lumiere before her identity was revealed. As the sun rose, Amara stood before Lumiere's doors again, this time flanked by her dream team. Inside, Brad was berating a busboy for streaking the silverware until the staff entrance swung open. Every employee Amara had personally hired snapped to attention. Maria, now interim manager per last night's decree, stepped forward with a crisp nod. The team's ready, Ms. Williams. Amara adjusted her blazer designer this time and let her voice carry. Brad Thompson, you've got 30 seconds to vacate the premises before security escorts you out. Clock starts now. Somewhere in the kitchen, Chef Mateo started a countdown in Spanish with flair. The busboy Brad had just insulted tossed him a trash bag. For your dignity, jefe? The restaurant held its breath. Brad's face cycled through stages of grief before landing on sheer, delicious panic. Amara smiled. This was the atmosphere she'd created, one where karma was always on the menu. Brad's office door hadn't even clicked shut before his phone started vibrating like a live wire. Notifications flooded in, aisle mentions, comment replies, duet requests, all stemming from Sarah Chen's TikTok. The video's caption screamed, "When the standard is just code for racism." It had already racked up 50K views. His thumb hovered over the screen, torn between damage control and denial, when a new email notification popped up. Subject: Urgent Lumiere, Ownership Verification. From Ethan Cole, Chicago Tribune. Mr. Thompson, care to comment on allegations you ejected Lumiere's majority owner, Amara Williams, from her own restaurant last night? Attached security footage unedited. Deadline: 30 minutes. The scotch glass slipped from Brad's hand, shattering on the floor like his career. Outside, the dining room's usual murmur had morphed into something sharper chatter, punctuated by gasps and the occasional "oh my God," as phones were passed between tables. At the hostess stand, Maria watched in real time as her own TikTok duet, "When Your Boss Doesn't Know the Owner is Black," hit 10K likes. Then came the coup de grace. The restaurant's landline rang. Carlos answered, smirk widening with every "yes, sir," and "immediately, sir." He strolled to Brad's office, knocked once, and delivered the death blow. "Corporate's on the line. They say you're to vacate the premises before the real manager arrives. Oh, and HR wants your keycard." Brad's laugh was hollow. "Corporate? There is no corporate. The owners are in Europe?" Carlos finished. "Funny story. Ms. Williams FaceTimed them at 3 a.m. They sold to her last week. Guess they forgot to tell you." He tossed Brad a trash bag, the same one the busboy had offered earlier. Pro tip: the dumpster out back locks at noon. In the chaos, no one noticed Sarah Chen slipping her business card to Maria. "Call me," she whispered. "My tech firm's hosting a diversity summit. We'd love Lumiere's new management to speak." By the time Brad stumbled onto the sidewalk, his professional reputation was already trending, just not how he'd hoped. The valet, a black teen in a Lumiere vest, tossed him his keys with a grin. "Rough day, sir. Don't worry, Olive Garden's always hiring." Inside, the staff erupted in applause as Amara walked through the door again, this time to a standing ovation. Chef Mateo presented a platter of fresh beignets dusted with gold. "Special of the day," he announced. "Humble pie. Compliments of the house." And as the first lunch orders rolled in, Amara tapped out one final text to Jerome. "Change of plans. Skip court. We're buying a country club instead." Somewhere, a TikTok notification dinged. Brad's standards had just gone viral. Brad's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as the restaurant's landline rang for the 15th time that morning. Maria picked up her voice tight. "Yes, we're aware of the video. No, Mr. Thompson is unavailable for comment. Yes, the owner is black." She hung up to find Brad glaring. "Stop confirming that last part," he hissed. "It makes us look guilty." Maria's phone buzzed a group chat with the kitchen staff blowing up with memes of Brad's face photoshopped onto Gone with the Wind posters. Carlos had already changed the Wi-Fi password to Firebrad 2023. Then the door chimed. Not a diner, not the press. Ethan Cole from the Tribune strolled in, press badge glinting, followed by a cameraman. "Mr. Thompson." Ethan called a voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Care to explain why Lumiere's Yelp reviews dropped from 4.8 to 1.2 stars overnight? The atmosphere complaints are creative." He flashed his phone a screenshot of a 1-star review. "Great wine list if you're white. Manager might confiscate your melanin at the door." Brad's rebuttal died in his throat as the kitchen door swung open. Chef Mateo emerged holding a massive sheet cake iced with new management in vibrant afro-purple. "Special family meal," he announced. "Ingredients, karma comeuppance, and 3 kinds of fuck around and find out." The staff erupted in cheers. Across town, Amara wasn't just reviewing lawsuits, she was orchestrating a masterstroke. "Call the James Beard Foundation back," she instructed her PR director. "Tell them we're launching the Lumiere initiative, full scholarships for black hospitality students." And David, she tossed her partner a folder. Brad's real resume. Turns out his 8 years at Winnetka Country Club ended with a settlement for racial profiling. Our HR team missed it, conveniently. Back at Lumiere, Brad's phone lit up with a breaking news alert. Chicago Tribune exclusive. The viral video that exposed fine dining's racism problem. The byline, Ethan Cole. The featured quote, "When your standards are just segregation with a sommelier," said Amara Williams, "you don't belong in my industry." Brad's final blow came via text, a screenshot of Lumiere's Instagram. The bio now read, "Under new leadership, proudly anti-racist, hiring all kinds of excellence." The post beneath it. A photo of Maria at the host stand grinning with Amara's arm around her shoulders. Caption, "Meet your new GM. We belong." As Brad emptied his desk, the valet slipped him a parting gift, a single breadstick wrapped in an Olive Garden napkin. "For the road, sir," he said. "Unlimited, just like your free time." Outside, protesters had gathered their signs reading, "Dignity Dress Code," and "Amara's seat is reserved." Brad ducked his head and scurried past just as a food truck rolled up across the street. Williams Hospitality Soul Food Edition, its banner proclaimed. Amara's mother waved from the window, doling out peach cobbler to the crowd. "Compliments of the real management," she called. Somewhere, a TikTok notification chimed. The video hit 1 million views. Brad's mouth opened and closed like a fish tossed onto dry land as the paralegal snapped open the briefcase with a flourish. Inside, atop the termination papers, lay a single photograph, Amara shaking hands with the European owners at the signing ceremony when she'd bought them out. The date stamp 2 weeks ago. Surprise. Amara said, her voice shifting from steel to something almost playful. "Turns out your hierarchy was missing a few rungs." Behind her, Carlos couldn't resist adding, like the one labeled basic human decency. The staff erupted in laughter, the sound bouncing off the very crystal glasses Brad had used to symbolize exclusivity. Then came the pièce de résistance. The front door swung open again, and in walked Sarah Chen, the TikTok tech exec with a camera crew from Good Morning America. Ms. Williams, Sarah called mic in hand, care to comment on how your viral moment is sparking a national conversation about racism in hospitality? Brad made a strangled noise. This wasn't just termination, it was a spectacle. Amara turned to the cameras, her smile razor sharp. Happy to, but first. She gestured to Maria, who stepped forward with a crisp new contract. Meet Lumiere's real general manager, promoted from hostess in 12 hours, because she knows true hospitality isn't about keeping people out. She paused, locking eyes with Brad. It's about lifting them up. The GMA producer whispered, "We're going live in 5. Just as Brad's phone buzzed with a notification, Winnetka Country Club has terminated your membership. Chef Mateo chose that moment to wheel out a cart bearing a single domed platter. With a dramatic flourish, he lifted the lid to reveal of all things a resignation letter frosted in gold icing. Compliments of the pastry team, he deadpanned. We could have written it in chocolate, but he glanced at Brad's ashen face. Seemed redundant. As the cameras rolled, Amara handed Brad a pen. Sign here, she said sweetly, and here's your severance. She held up a takeout bag from Olive Garden. Unlimited breadsticks. Just like you offered me. The staff burst into applause. Brad scrawled his name, grabbed the bag, and bolted for the door, straight into a wall of protesters now chanting, "Bye, Brad." Outside, his former parking spot was occupied by Amara's food truck, its neon sign flashing, now hiring people who fit the atmosphere. Hint, everyone does. Back inside, the Good Morning America camera panned to Amara, now seated at the very table Brad had tried to banish her from. To new beginnings, she toasted, raising a glass of the missing Lafitte. The staff raised theirs too, their smiles saying what words couldn't. Brad's knees buckled as Janet slapped the documents onto the host stand, each page bearing Amara's signature in bold ink. The paralegal then produced an iPad tapping play on a video that made Brad's stomach drop. There, in crisp 4K, were the European owners grinning at the camera. Congratulations, Amara Lumiere couldn't be in better hands. The timestamp, 3 days before Brad's hiring. A sudden clang echoed from the kitchen. Louis the dishwasher emerged still in his rubber apron, holding a framed photo no one had noticed before Amara cutting Lumiere's ribbon on opening night standing beside the mayor. He hung it deliberately over Brad's now former office door. "Para recordar," he muttered. "The boss was always here." The room held its breath as Amara plucked a linen napkin from a nearby table. With deliberate calm, she polished one of Lumiere's prized wine glasses, the same one Brad had used to serve his preferred clientele, before letting it slip through her fingers. The shatter was deafening. "That," she said, stepping over the shards, "was your last mistake as an employee. This," she gestured to the stunned staff, "is your first lesson as a team. We don't just tolerate diversity here. We celebrate it with better training, profit sharing, and—" She snapped her fingers. Chef Mateo wheeled out a champagne tower, non-vintage, affordable, and for everyone. Brad lunged for his briefcase, but Jennifer blocked him. Her earlier shame replaced with steel. Company property. She yanked it open, revealing stacks of reservation slips with handwritten notes. Table 12, Urban Vibe Watch, closely. Black couple seat near kitchen. The damning evidence fluttered to the floor as the GMA camera zoomed in. "Ah, funny," Amara mused, "how your standards came with memos." She turned to Maria. "Call the staff meeting for 3 p.m. We're rewriting the employee handbook. First draft." She kicked Brad's abandoned briefcase. "Burn this one." As security escorted Brad out, his final humiliation came via the restaurant's speakers Carlos had queued up. "Another one bites the dust" at full volume. The protesters outside erupted when they saw him, their chants of "Bye, Brad," now punctuated by something new: "Hire Amara." Inside, the real work began. Amara popped the champagne bubbles overflowing like the staff's laughter. To new beginnings, she toasted not at the VIP table, but perched on the hostess stand, her heels dangling like the girl who'd once served tacos from a food truck. The camera crew captured it, all the shattered glass, the damning notes, the staff's tearful hugs. And somewhere in the chaos, a single breadstick tossed from the food truck outside sailed through the door and landed perfectly on Brad's empty chair.